Hello, teachers, parents, and educational leaders, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Down the B.E.S.T. Now, during this episode, you will get a peek into the members-only area where I have tons of resources to help you make math fun, make it click, and make it stick. There should be a link somewhere around this video where you can learn more. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get to it, and let's break down the standard. Welcome to Breaking Down the B.E.S.T, a video series dedicated to breaking down Florida's best standards for math. So grab something to write with and maybe even a snack. This looks good. And don't forget to put a smile on your face. There you go, I see you. And let's dive into today's best standard. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on this Breaking Down the B.E.S.T episode as we break down the following standard. Today's standard is MA.3.FR.2.1, and the standard says to plot, order, and compare fractional numbers with the same numerator or the same denominator. So let's talk about that. Plot means that we're going to be placing points. Ordering them means putting them in order, first, second, third. That might mean from least to greatest or from greatest to least, ascending order or descending order. Comparing using these symbols, the less than, greater than, or equal to symbols. And fractional numbers is just saying that fractions are numbers. It's awesome, right? With the same numerator, like for instance 2/3 and 2/4, both have a numerator of 2, meaning that 2 parts would be shaded in or be 2 jumps from the whole. Or the same denominator, like 2/3 and 4/3, both are divided into the same equal size parts, but more of them are being considered with 4/3 versus 2/3. The example says that the fraction 3/2 is to the right of the fraction 3/3. You can see there they have the same numerator, 3. So we can determine that 3/2 is greater than 3/3. This is talking about on a number line. By the way, this document that I'm marking up all over is not something that I created. This is something that the Florida Department of Education releases to the public. Thank you. And in these episodes, I'm just showing you how I break down the standards in order to create the resources that are available to you with your taking on the B.E.S.T membership. So we'll spend about half of the video deconstructing the standard, breaking it apart, taking a look at what is being featured here, and then we'll spend the second half of the video showing you what is strategically aligned to the standard that we're going over. So let's continue. Some clarifications that you need to know. It says instruction includes making connections between using a ruler when plotting and ordering fractions on a number line. So getting that straight edge in there is cool, and showcasing how like if you're using centimeters to break your equal parts, that would be helpful there too. It says when comparing fractions, instruction includes an appropriately scaled number line, which you will see in the Taking On the B.E.S.T episodes. So students can use reasoning about their size. Fractions will include fractions greater than 1, like 6/4, where our numerator is greater than the denominator. It goes past 1 whole. And also mixed numbers, which would be like 1 and 2/4, the equivalent of 6/4. Fractions greater than 1 and mixed numbers are where students tend to make the majority of their mistakes when it comes to fractions. So we definitely need to push a lot of practice their way so they can feel comfortable and confident with those. Also, denominators are limited to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and 12. And if it is not one of those, don't bother with it, okay? All right, so where is that horizontal alignment, or what other standards are going to be connected with this? And really it's all of the fraction standards, but they're highlighting here 3.FR.2.2, which is the equivalent fraction standard, the next one we're going to go over. And also 3.NSO.1.3 is where we plotted, ordered, and compared numbers up to 1,000. So now, sorry, to 10,000. So now we're just connecting this to fractions because fractions are numbers. Super fun. Some terms you need to know. Number line, they're saying. I'm also including the numerator and denominator there. and maybe even fraction greater than 1, mixed number. Those are all good terms to make sure that your students know. Vertical alignment, where are they coming from in second grade? Well, they plotted, ordered, and compared numbers up to 1,000 last year. And next year, they will be plotting, ordering, comparing fractions, just they are not going to be limited to needing to have the same numerator or the same denominator. They could be comparing 3/5 and 4/6, for instance, where neither the numerator or denominator is the same. That's in fourth grade. They'll also be using benchmark fractions, which are 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 to help plot and order and compare those in fourth grade. Also, there is the equivalent fraction standard in fourth grade too. So everything you're doing this year is really going to help them for next year too, okay? And in the future. Purpose and instructional strategies section. Let's go ahead and go over what jumped out at me. It said that the purpose for this benchmark is for students to plot and order fractions with the same numerator. For instance, 3/4, 3/2, 3/8, they all have 3 in the numerator. Or fractions with the same denominator, like this, 3/5, 10/5, 7/5, they all have 5 in the denominator. And we're comparing them by their location on the number line. The number line is a huge piece here. This will hopefully help them to understand the difference in size when fractions have the same numerator, or the size of the parts, and comparing fractions with the same denominator, the number of parts. This says students should also utilize open number lines to practice creating their own appropriately scaled number lines. This is just saying how to place the 0.9 on a number line would be 5 units from 0 that are 1/3 in length. And that number lines help students to see the comparisons. The further you go, the greater the value of that fraction. And again, this is brought up in like every single standard, that reinforcing that fractions are numbers. Okay, for this common misconception or errors, I mentioned that this was kind of written in a confusing way, saying that students can confuse that when numerators are the same in fraction, the larger denominators represent smaller pieces, but this is true. The larger the denominator is, the smaller the piece, and that smaller denominators represent larger pieces. This is also true. So I think what they're trying to say is that they might not understand the truth that these two statements bring. It said students may confuse that the size of a whole for each model must be the same size. Again, this is a true statement, but they use confusing wording there. The size of each whole must be the same size. That's very important. Next, we have some instructional tasks. Okay, for instance, this one says that Clara says that 5/4 is greater than 5/2 because they're looking at the denominator and saying that 4 is greater than 2. This is a common misconception that students have. Prove why she's correct using the number line below. You can see here, this is an open number line. So students having to use that number line provided to mark both where 5/4 is located and where 5/2 is located. It says order the fractions below from least to greatest. You'll notice there is no number line here to assist them. They could use their knowledge based on all the numerators being the same, or they can draw out a number line to help prove that. Here we have numeral word form, 7/4 and 3/4. So again, this is from 3.FR.1.3, being able to read fractions this way too. So it's combining that element into comparing them. Okay, I think that's it for breaking down the standard and seeing a little bit of what the standard looks like in action. So now let's go over what you have access to with your Taking on the B.E.S.T membership. So here we are on the website. We want to click members, enter here. McCarthy Math Academy. We want Taking on the B.E.S.T. Which grade? We want third grade. Which strand? We want the fraction strand. And then we are we're right here, 3.FR.2.1, plot, order, and compare fractions. So click that. The very first page that will open up will be your bronze resources. So whether you have the bronze, silver, or gold membership, you have access to these video lessons. And you can see there are 4 video lessons for this one. Awesome. Okay, the first one, comparing two fractions using a number line. Let me zoom in just a little bit. First one is comparing two fractions using a number line, and then you have this printable student guide where students can record their notes as they're watching the video. If you have the silver plan, there's also an extra practice page that looks just like what we do in this video lesson. So you can see here, we can look at it a little bit more closely, but you can see that we have the same numerator here. We're going to use these appropriately pre-scaled number lines to help us compare. Here we have the same denominator, and then here we have the same numerator. And we're plotting the points and comparing them, not putting them in order just yet. And the next one is comparing two fractions using a number line greater than 1. So really taking the time to say, in the first video, we're just focusing on less than or equal to 1. And in the next video, video lesson number 2, we're focusing on fractions that are greater than 1 and comparing those. Again, we've got number lines here. We'll take a closer look when we get to the silver in just a second. The next video lesson is now including that ordering element, plotting, ordering, and comparing fractions using a number line. And then all those were less than or equal to 1, and then we have this one. The final one is including fractions that are greater than 1. And in these last two video lessons, you can see that it is no longer scaled. The students will have to scale their own number line to label it. So those are your bronze video lessons with your student guides. Now, we also want to make sure that students understand it after they watch the video lessons, which is why we have this silver plan. So you can go back to those bronze video lessons at any time. I'm going to go ahead and click on the printables here that you have access to. It will include those bronze student guide pages. We have the video lesson with the student guide, and then the extra practice. Video lesson, extra practice, video lesson, extra practice is what you're going to see. So here's a video lesson. Again, we have these scaled number lines, so students should just practicing marking where the points go. Where does 2/4 go? Where does 2/3 go? And then looking at how we can use a number line to compare over here. Same with 1, 2, and 3. And then there's an extra practice page right below that with problems that look just like what we did in the video lesson, but now students can do it on their own. Then we get to the second video lesson where we're focusing on comparing using a number line with fractions that are greater than 1. So here we have the pre-scaled number line. We'll mark 5/5 up here and 4/5 there, and they will be able to see how 5 halves, how 5 halves is greater than 5/4, and so on. Okay, then there's extra practice here. After they've watched the video lesson and they have their notes, they can now apply that understanding to their own work. Then we get to video lesson number 3, where we have fractions that are less than 1. We will have to plot, we will have to order, and we will have to compare, which is what the standard says. Plot, order, and compare. We're also going to be going from least to greatest. That's called ascending order. And here again, least to greatest is an ascending order. For this one, I'm not seeing the descending order going from greatest to least, but I would make sure your students have some exposure to that just in case. And we have that fourth video lesson, plotting, ordering, and comparing fractions on a number line, including fractions that are greater than 1, same kind of thing. It's an open number line, and now if the denominator is the same, they'll have one number line. If the numerators are the same but different denominators, there's a few number lines there so they can mark it appropriately. All right, and then we have the math mission, which is like your math task. This one says the numerator is 8 for each of the fractions below. We can see that 8, 8, and 8. Create the denominators based on the rules given. So in this one, we need to place an odd denominator that's less than 7 and not 5. Then here, in this one, it needs to be even between 2 and 20, rounds to 10 when rounded to the nearest 10, and not 12 or 14. And then here, the number of sides in a pentagon. So it's kind of incorporating other things there to create your denominators, all of which should be in the denominator limits there. Then they'll plot the fractions on the number lines and then order them in ascending order from least to greatest. So it's kind of incorporating everything there, taking the learning, giving the students more responsibility for their learning there. And then we have Math Misconception Mystery, my favorite part. It's a video lesson. You just go back here to your silver Click play, and I will guide your students through the entire process. So first I'll say, okay, here's your problem for the day. Go ahead and solve it on your own and press play when you're ready. So students will solve this problem. Compare 8/5 and 9/5. Again, we're seeing numeral word form there using the appropriate sign. And then they will press play as 4 other characters solve that same problem. Now those 4 characters are just me dressed up in silly costumes with silly accents. 3 of the characters will make a mistake that students commonly make, and only 1 character has the correct answer. So it provides a great opportunity for your students to discuss, to decide, to debate, to really analyze, to go back and review the work that 4 other characters make. And then they fill out their detective report stating who the most reasonable answer belongs to and analyzing the work of the other 3 characters, okay? Now, once you incorporate these math misconception mystery videos, there's no turning back. Your students are going to eat these up and beg you for more if you roll them out like they're intended to be. Also, I would not show this as a first walk, like on your first day with this skill. I would make this after they've mastered and understand and feel more comfortable with the skill, then have them reasoning and finding those error analysis. All right, next we have the gold. So with the gold, you have access to everything we've already gone over, plus you have a mini assessment, which I'll show you, specifically aligned to the standard and every standard. It's about 4 to 5 questions depending on the standard with a variety of question types. You can see that we have the same numerator here, same numerator, same denominator. Got number lines, an open number line where students are having to plot an order from least to greatest over here. Analyzing this number line and selecting all the statements that are true, and then an error analysis one. So there's a variety of question types just for this standard. It doesn't say mini assessment, so you don't have to use it as an assessment. You can use it for extra practice, whatever you want to do with that. There's also the answer key. You have, for the gold members, you have access to these breaking down the best videos totally ad-free right here with all of your other standards. These videos are also available on YouTube, but it is a nice little perk that it's right there with everything else. But really, most people go with the gold package because they want access to McCarthy Math 155. Now, this is a daily math intervention video lessons that I created that's aligned to the Common Core standards. Now, I know we're in the BEST standards now in Florida. That's why I've created Taking on the BEST. And if you've been working with these standards for a little bit, you know that there are a lot of similarities. There are a lot of skills from the Common Core standards that do trickle over into these BEST standards. But there was enough of a difference for me to build a new program. So I had a lot of teachers and a lot of schools and principals asking me if I was going to have 155 also included because people loved it. So if you have this, you have access to 155 video lessons for each grade level. So clicking on 3rd grade, we can see here that we have a place value unit with 13 video lessons. If your students need help with adding and subtracting numbers with regrouping and word problems and knowing what to do with those, you have 16 extra video lessons for that. We've got 13 video lessons for multiplication, 15 video lessons for modeling division and connecting it to multiplication as an inverse with word problems. We have 2-step word problems, but we're really focusing, because of this standard, we're focusing on the fractions. So you can see here for this fraction unit, there's 24 video lessons, and we are comparing fractions. Now, I do believe in this, let me go scrolling down so you can see we're modeling fractions. Let's get to more of the comparing. Modeling fractions on a number line, which we're doing in this standard. Modeling fractions greater than 1 on a number line, which we're doing in this standard. So it's just reinforcing those. Now here we have fraction equivalence and comparison. This is with using area models to compare, and also cross multiplication to check it. I am a firm believer that I want students to understand what fractions are, so I love them to be able to model it and see the fraction and be able to use that to help compare it, and using the cross multiplication to check, not as the sole resource there. So there's lots and lots and lots. You can see there's tons of video lessons here in McCarthy Math 155. So that is why you probably went with the gold. All right, I think that is it. I hope that this video helped it to make sense, that you understand the standard, you understand what you have access to, and now it's time for you to get out there and help your students. Thank you so much for everything that you do, for stepping into the best version of yourself every day to inspire your students to do the same. I know you're busy, so I will see you in the next episode real soon. Bye! Okay, so I know that I just said goodbye for now, but I'm gonna ask you to do one more thing, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your teacher friends or other leaders in education. That's how I get to continue doing what I love to do, which of course is supporting you all to the best of my ability. All right, for real now. Bye!